Good Sunday morning to you. Glad you're here. I'm your host, Adam Greer, and this is the first episode of God is Not Mad at Me. I want to talk about the first one I'm titling Dare to Believe. It'll be the first couple episodes, and it's just really my story, how I got here. And so this is Dare to Believe Part 1. But I do want to also talk about the chalkboard. Why the chalkboard? You know, if you remember when you were a kid in school and you would get in trouble, say something bad on the playground, whatever, pull a young girl's hair when but your teacher would make you go to the chalkboard. What would she tell you to do? Write out, I will not pull ponytails anymore. I will not pull ponytails anymore. And what was the idea behind that? Why were you forced to write it out 100 times or 200 times or whatever the teacher had determined? Is because the idea was to beat it into your head, to get this thing internalized that I will not do this thing again. I want you to get it into your soul that God is not mad at me. 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 I want that to be part of every moment of your day, thinking about it, saying that to yourself. I want you to look in the mirror in the morning and say good morning to yourself. Good morning. God is not mad at you. Say it to yourself. Don't ever quit thinking this. Get it in, whatever it takes. If you have to write it every morning, write it every day. You're right. If you have to go through that discipline, do it. Because it's the most powerful lesson we're ever going to learn. God is not mad at me. So how did I get here? That's what we're going to start with. How did I become a host of this TV show on Grace Awakening Network? I don't really know. No, I do. So I'm going to tell you that story. I think it's important to understand what I teach, why I teach what I teach, is to understand my journey, how I got here myself, how I came to believe the things that I now believe. I was raised in a very religious environment. And I believed that God was not happy at all. Not happy with me, not happy with mankind. He just was not happy, period, with anything. He was just constantly waiting to just unleash his wrath upon the globe and just destroy it all. I never doubted his existence. It wasn't like somebody had to tell me that God that God was real and I became a believer. That never existed. There was never a time where that took place. I just believed. I can't tell you when. There's no. I was sitting on a pond, 3 years old, and just believed. I always have. There was never a doubt in my mind. I feel that's an important fact to my story because while I grew up believing God was real, I had no doubt about that. Again, I believed that he was pretty pissed and that he was not happy with anything he had created. And that was just taught to me constantly. He's not happy. We were taught to watch everything we did, to monitor ourselves, monitor our behavior, because God is just right there, just waiting to thump me on the head. This ultimately led to a lifestyle of screw it. I just kind of, I thought if I suck, if I'm just this horrible slug of a human being that I can't please anybody, then I'll just live the way I want. I'll do the things I want. I had no regard for any hurt I caused on people. I wasn't intentionally hurting people. It wasn't like I was running around being an absolute idiot and a jerk on purpose or anything like that. Some people might have perceived it as that, but it wasn't my intention. But I also didn't care really about anyone, myself included. Just lived this crazy life of self-sabotage, just with no hope. I had no hope. I wasn't trying to please God. I was just hoping that somehow, someday, before I died, that God would find a way to not be mad at me. That I'd be able to just squeak in, the hair of my chin, get underneath those gates. And that's how I lived. Afraid of God, screw it attitude, but hoping somehow that God would just not kill me, not destroy me. I lived life like you see really in the mob movies. I would go out there in the world and just do my thing. Remember, just didn't care about anybody, didn't care about who I was hurting, didn't care about myself, didn't care about my family reputation, my family name, anything. Just live my life and then go to confession, and hope that I can, if I died now, I'm clean and we'll be good. But then I'd get out there on Monday morning and start all over and recycle. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Going back to my lifestyle choice of screw it, and back to my moment with God, this cosmic ruler, and hope that I could keep him happy, just in case. I won't go into all the details of the crap that I did for the first 28 years of my life. It really doesn't matter, because we all have our stories, and you might have worse stories than I have, or I might have worse stories than you have. That's really not the point. It was just simply that I lived bad. I did a lot of things that were they were not good. Just not good as a human being to my fellow human beings. I just lived bad. That's how I lived my life the first 20 years. I get to 1993, though. Here's where things began to change. I had experienced a botched surgery. I already had 2 kids, been married now to my wife. I got married in 87, and had this surgery. And I woke up from the surgery, and the left side of my upper body was paralyzed as a result of this botched surgery. There I was, again, married with children, scared, tired, wore out. Just life had beat me up. So I just returned home from an appointment with a different neurologist. I wanted to find another opinion. Come home from the hospital. It's now a month later about. And I go to this new neurologist, and I get all these tests done. And they had determined that my face, I was all saggy. They determined it was going to return to pretty much normal. I saw a little bit of stuff. If you really look, you can see my eye droops a little bit, things like that, down to my chest. They said, your face is going to recover. Your chest is probably going to recover, but you'll never use your left arm again. Spoiler alert, it's not bionic. It's here. More on that in a minute. But I would never be able to use it as a regular appendage ever again. Come home from this appointment. Of course, my wife's eager to hear what they'd said. And so we're in the bedroom, and just sharing with her what's going on. And I tell her about this face return, chest return, but probably never going to use my arm again. She begins to cry, of course. She's overwhelmed by this. She's not sure of the future, neither am I. She's now going to have a somewhat disabled husband, and there's all kinds of thoughts, whirling around in this moment. And so I leave her in there to kind of just get through it on her own. I really didn't know what to say or do. And I went out to my dining room table. At this point, everywhere I went, I had to carry my left arm, and I'd put it on my armpit. That's how I'd walk around, just supporting this dead arm. And I'd put, do whatever I had to do with it. And so I come out, and I flopped it up on the table, scared, wore out, just so much going on. And not really scared in a sense of God, or that I'd grown up with this fear. I just was scared of life, of just what's next, the uncertainty. I began to have this real conversation with God. It's unusual. I say unusual. I had never had a conversation with God. A lot of praying, but that was not conversating with God. It was flare prayer. It was always a moment of desperation. It was always this, oh crap, I've done screwed up, and oh, help me, God. I promise if you get me out of this, I won't ever do it again. All those types of conversations. But I began to have real talk. It's really back and forth. I know that's kind of weird. I don't know how to explain that, but it was definitely engaging, and we were talking. However you perceive that, it was inside, it was internal, it was real, tangible. And so I'm just sitting there worried, tired. I'm like, God, what is your plan? That was weird. What is your plan? I've not cared about that much. I've known since I was a kid, for as long as I can remember, that there was a calling on my life. I really didn't know what that meant. I use that word now just because it's what you use, but what I called it a calling at that point. There was just something that I felt I needed to teach. I would teach about God. I don't really know what it was I was teaching, because was not walking with God. Certainly had never read the Bible. very religious, so I really don't know what I would teach. But when I say I would teach, one of the things I was involved in for a long time was drugs. And we'd been some of the most highest states. And people would, this group would turn into a God conversation as much as we understood God. And I would be the one often leading the conversations. People would ask me about God. I don't know why. Because I had no answers. So I really can't tell you what it was I was teaching. But I had known this was there. Remember, there's very real times of hearing God say things. Wasn't using those terms then, would have described that way, but I'm hearing God and I'm ignoring Him. But here in this moment, I was scared. The future. I said, God, I give You my life. I don't know what that meant. I just knew I needed to, and it was real. I'd made these types of prayers before, these statements. But in this moment, it was genuine. It was, give You my life. Do with it whatever You please. It's Yours. I'm tired of running, tired of trying to do it my way. My way's brought me to this moment. I'm sitting there paralyzed. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I've got kids and a wife, and there's nothing. 29 years old, and I've just nothing in front of me. God, I've done it my way for too long. It's Yours. Time. Felt very exposed. This moment was again very real. It had never been that way before. I'm exposed before God. Nobody was sharing the gospel, presenting all the call. I'm just sitting there vulnerable, scared. And I finished those words, and I had this crazy idea. It's like, God, You made me. You created this body. Do You have a plan? Can You do something about this? I'd heard Bible stories of healing and all these things, and didn't know it was for today. But I sheepishly looked up and, okay, God, You made me. I believe You can do it. Show me a sign that You have a plan. I want to step back for a minute because I held this out purposely. But when I was at the doctor, their answer was, you got to remove the left arm. That's also part of what I told my wife in the bedroom, why she was so upset, just devastated. They want to take off my left arm. They want my decision ASAP, and before gangrene and stuff sets in. And so I'm look up to God. It's okay. Do You have a plan? It really wasn't necessarily that. Again, I didn't know God healed per se. Can You do something? Do You have a plan? Do I go through with removing the arm? Show me something. And so I'm sitting there, my arm on the table, and I'm trying to make something work. Figure something will move. That's my sign. And the doctors there was nothing. And I lifted my finger about an inch off the table. And I knew that was it. I knew that was that sign. Because the injury is in my neck. And I'm moving the bottom of the nerve. If you understand nerves, that's impossible. What happened next, I can't even exaggerate enough for you. It felt like a washing come over me. This confidence and peace. And it just, and with that, this certainty, this belief, God's going to heal me. So I run into the bedroom. I tell my wife, interrupted her teary-eyed, snot-draining face, mess, fearful moment. I said, babe, don't worry about it. She looks up at me. I said, God's going to heal me. And her response, she looked up at me through all this mess, tears. I'm standing. She's sitting actually on the floor. She looks up at me and through all this mess says, you're talking to God now? I said, yes. And He just told me it's all going to be okay. I was on these heavy narcotics at the time. They're treating what's called phantom pain. Somebody loses a limb, they get itches, and until the brain connects that it's not there anymore, it'll drive you crazy when you think it's itching or needs to move or whatever. And so I'm under these narcotics. I'm high, not certainly as high as I've been in my life, but I've got this going on. And so she thinks it's the drugs, I'm losing my mind, it's the stress. She's not buying it, but I knew that what I had just experienced was real, and nobody was going to convince me otherwise. The next day I call my doctors, and I tell them, I'm not going to do surgery. They said, why is that? I said, well, God's going to heal me. And I was telling anybody I knew it. And the nurse I was talking to said, Mr. Greer, this is what's known as denial. It's okay. Everybody goes through it. We have a doctor you can talk to. They can help you. But you've got to get this surgery ASAP. They were really concerned about gangrene, of course. I get that. But my reply was simply, look, I'm going to go physical therapy. That's what I'm doing. I'm not doing any surgeries. Can't convince me otherwise. I'll schedule me and I'm going to show up. Go back and forth on this while they finally relent. I'm sure they were hoping it would just be a passing phase and that maybe the therapist can convince me. So after much back and forth, they give me the prescription to go to therapy. Show up to the therapy the first day. The PT says the same basic thing. Mr. Greer, we think you need to listen to the doctor. This is pretty serious, and you've got to deal with this. Same thing. Not going to. God's going to heal me. He told me. I was convinced of it. Convinced. They don't know what to do. Again, it's a little back and forth. Finally, I said, look, I'm going to be every single day. If there's something you've ever wanted to experiment, some treatment, some technique, do it. But I'm going to be here every single day. God's going to heal me. Get to that first day, they schedule me. They don't know what to do. They think I'm crazy as well. Nobody is buying any of this. For the first 6 months of all this, my arm actually gets worse. It just dies. For all points and purposes, it's a dead arm. Purple, 24 hours a day. Fingernails had quit growing. It's atrophied. It's just cold. And I knew enough about blood flow that I had to keep the blood flowing. I never questioned why it wasn't working. I just knew God's got a plan, so I'm just here for the ride. So I'd hold my arm over my head and let the cold blood come in, and I'd set my arm back down. That's how I would create circulation. Do that however often I felt I need to as soon as it was cold. And then at around the 6-month mark, been therapies, they've been trying everything they can. I get this tingling, like it's waking up from being asleep, like when your foot is falling asleep and it's that pins and needles. When your foot falls asleep, though, within a few minutes you wiggle it, do your thing, and it quits. And it's driving you crazy during that point. Mine didn't quit for about 72 hours. As painful as that was, as horrible as that feeling was, this other part of me understood this is a sign of life. This is only happening because something has taken place going on my arm. Okay, so now I want to back up just a little bit as well. I'm believing, giving God my life. I'm doing my physical therapy. All this is going on, but I'm still struggling spiritually. Still doing my will. Hated it though. I would do things that I normally did, and it just felt wrong. It wasn't a guilt. It wasn't a, man, I'm not supposed to do that. It just, the satisfaction of how I used to live just wasn't there. It just felt yucky. That's the best word I can use for it. I couldn't figure out what was going on. God, what's going on? I was talking to God. What am I doing? What am I missing? Couldn't figure out why I was still kind of living this selfish life, though I hated it. January 1994. I knew we needed to do something. Wife's still struggling with all this. Everyone still thinks I'm crazy. It's arm's starting to show signs of movement. And it's working. So everyone's kind of okay. Something's happening, but nobody's still sure of what is going on with Adam and God and healing and all this stuff. So that we need to get to our first non-religious experience. So we went to this church. They just built a new building, and it was their grand opening. So let's go check this out. We got to do something. And I'm trying to find why I'm not living differently. Wife's trying to find answers. Okay, let's go to church. That's what we need to do. So we go to this first service. We walk through the doors, and I'm standing in the foyer. And as I walk in, something felt real. And then I hear God again. It's that same voice. It's at the dining room table. The same voice I'd heard throughout my years say to me very clearly. Again, to me, it was audible. No one else heard it. It's internal. However you explain that. But I hear him say, you gave me your life. It's time to surrender it. And I heard that word surrender. It just like rang that bell for me. There it is. There's what I need to do. Wow. That's what's wrong. I'm still living my life the way I've understood it, the habits that I've had. I'm just living my life. And God says it's time to surrender it. Can't do it my way anymore. My ways are bad. My ways are tiring. My ways are frustrating. My ways don't want to accomplish anything. Okay, God, I'll do it your way. Teach me. Show me. So there I was, trying to live my life, struggling with feelings of failure, and set free. Right there, that moment. Boom. I knew it. It was not like, oh, I'm free. Boom. There it is. I'm ready. When I say set free, I mean instantly my lifestyle changed. I wasn't laboring anymore to do it. I wasn't laboring at all. It was just, I just was. I knew I was different. So much so that this instant difference, that a couple weeks after this, my wife looks at me and she kind of questions, she says, what's different about you? What's happened? Because I haven't heard you say the F word in a couple weeks. That's important because that was my favorite word. That was a punctuation point. One of those habits that I started as a young kid. Wasn't aware of it necessarily, but that flowed off me pretty good. And so I knew when she says, I haven't heard it in a couple weeks, took me back too. I was like, you're right. I told you. God's done something. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's real. I am not doing it on purpose. It wasn't hard anymore. 7 years of marriage, that's all she heard. I'm not angry. I'm not selfish. I'm gentle, with my kids. There's so many different things going on that she's just really blown away. She finally started to believe something was happening. So I decided to actually have some fun and try testing a little bit some of my old habits and try to drop a bomb, and it felt terrible. It's got nothing to do with today and whether, I'm not telling you can't cuss, but don't get me wrong on that. It wasn't the language that was the issue. It's not the language for today. I don't care what you say. God doesn't care what you say. But for me, the evidence of this change was all of my habits began to manifest differently. That got rid of that. Oh, that's not. And it just began to work its way off. So I couldn't even fake it if I wanted to. It was crazy. I want to mention that in the middle of all this, I did have one believer, my daughter, Ashley. She was like 4 at the time, maybe 5, but I'm pretty sure it was around 4. She heard me say God's going to heal me and believed it. And this became, I just want this story. There was a point I was laying on my bed one day doing my stretches and doing my therapies at home, but I was just tired, just kind of frustrated. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't days where I'm like, okay, God, can we just finish this healing thing? She jumps up in the bed. She says, Dad, what's wrong? I told her. She says, Dad, God said he's going to heal you. He's going to. He's going to finish this. This came from my little 4-year-old girl. Incredible. When she sets her mind, when she believes something, she believes it. And she heard me say God was real. And okay. She heard me say God's going to heal you. Okay. She was my only real support at the time. Get done with this story. Ashley jumps off. She's satisfied. And I was encouraged. I was that childlike faith of my daughter. This ability to just hear God. This dared to believe. That's why this series, I know I haven't talked much about this daring to believe, but I had dared to believe that what happened at that dining room table was real. My daughter, I don't know if she would have thought, at 4 years old, that she's daring to believe, but she dared to believe. She said, okay, I'm going with this. When you hear Papa, that's really how I speak about him now, but when you hear God say something, when you feel a leading and a direction. Dare to believe. Dare to believe him. What is there to lose? Yeah. So, what if people think I'm weird? What if the doctors think I'm crazy? What if my physical therapist thinks I'm crazy? What if my wife, my husband, my children, my parents think I'm crazy? What if my neighbors think I've lost my mind? Okay. What if? Dare to believe. Because it's now manifesting in my life. And through this journey, my parents became believers. My brother, my sister, my wife, my own children became believers. My whole family history changed. My family tree changed. Not because someone preached the gospel, some altar call, because I dared to believe. And all the people thought I was crazy, I didn't worry about that because I knew what God said. So through that belief, my family was able to come and believe too. All right, I'm going to leave us there. I'm out of time this week. I could talk a lot more. We're going to talk more about it over the next 2 episodes. I sure hope that you found something of value, something that can bless you, something that can encourage you in this story. I know it's not much teaching yet. I hope it is, though, because I don't think that teaching always means opening up the Word and this word means this and this word means that and this means this. Life experience, walking with God. I hope you can hear some stuff in this that can encourage you in your journey, that you can now walk the rest of this week daring to believe. And we'll get to the good stuff here in a little bit, a couple weeks, and then we'll start actually teaching, digging into some things. I want to challenge you this week. Dare to believe God is bigger than you've been taught. Dare to believe that God is bigger than you think. Dare to believe that God is bigger than what you're hearing on Sundays normally. Dare to believe. I'll see you next time. Cheers.